Said about this show. No, this phenomenon. Dragon Ball Z in specific is like Avatar: The Last Airbender for me, in the sense that everyone I knew growing up watched the hell out of the show. All the kids would sit down at the lunch table in 4th grade, regardless of what clique you were a part of, and talk about how awesome Vegeta was. But I actually didn't get the chance to experience the show until Nickelodeon started airing the recut DBZ Kai. Oh, I was plenty familiar with the show and all the characters before the Nickelodeon release in 2010, but that was all thanks to the video games. Seeing as how the show focused on people flying around and fighting while shooting lasers and other energy blasts at one another, it was perfect material for a video game tie-in. And I've played most all, and I am a huge fan of Dragon Ball games. I played all the Budokai games, and I'm probably among the few that actually enjoy 2. Tenkaichi 3 for the Wii was a game that my cousin Jake and I would always find time to take each other on in, and I adored how the game took you through the entire Dragon Ball chronology. Then the first Raging Blast game had me hooked. I loved it so much, and I was incredibly disappointed by the second one. Then Ultimate Tenkaichi was pitiful, and I didn't know what kind of Dragon Ball game it wanted to be. And I think it was the most I've been disappointed by a DBZ title. Then Battle of Z came along, and it was a little strange too, but in a more interesting way. It was the first game to do large-scale multiplayer battles with free range of movement. I don't remember the combat being very complex or anything, and looking back on it, I think it was a good first try for the formula they would eventually iron the kinks out for the Xenoverse games. The Xenoverse titles are a great time, and it's always pleasant when I need to capture some footage for it. I think the first title, which I still have my receipt for from February 27th of 2015, wow, time has flown, allows you to have more freedom with your moves than its sequel. But 2 is still a great experience that's alive today. Then we come to probably the best of the best, Fighters. All Dragon Ball games up until this point had just done their best to make whatever game engine they were using resembled the show through good model and environment construction and some cel shading techniques. And this is still kind of par for the course with most anime games. But Arc Systems broke the boundaries for how these games look. Just look at this. It's Dragon Ball in every sense of the word. And the gameplay is amazing too. It's the first fighting game in a long time that I've bothered to get moderately okay at, just because it's a fun game to play. And the steady stream of DLC characters helps with keeping the interest alive. Or at least it would if we weren't getting so many Gokus. But I think the reason I'm telling you all this stuff is to convince you that I know what I'm talking about when Dragon Ball games are in the spotlight. I'm a huge dork for them. I might not be the most dedicated fan of the show, but I do own several movies and the Boo Saga. It's because Nickelodeon stopped airing the show after the Cell Saga, don't crucify me. So believe me when I say I have been looking forward to Kakarot for a very long time. The game looks to be the next game that I can absolutely just sink my teeth into and get stupid lost in the adventure. So,
sorry to keep you waiting.
Let's see how this one turned out. Wow, I don't know the last time I experienced a game from an established IP that was this dedicated to pleasing every inch of the fan base. It's got callbacks, references, winks, nods, Easter eggs that will make any Dragon Ball fan blush. So I'll tell you now before I ruin any more of the surprises. If you plan on picking this up and haven't done so yet, I would not watch this video. Mainly because I don't want to accidentally spoil any surprises the game has in store for people like you and I. But also because I wouldn't want to color your opinion on this game before you even touch it. So from here on out, I'm going to be diving deep into this game, so be prepared. I think I was the most interested by this game's premise as an action RPG. It was everywhere on the adverts during the build-up of this game. A game where skill in controlling a Dragon Ball character is met with a numbers game. Yeesh. I was a little skeptical. You guys know how I feel about overly complicated numbers and percentages rearing their heads into my action games. But I was willing to give this my full attention and learn the systems. I was really concerned with how they were going to balance a game as long as this one was boasting to be. But the typical leveling system works surprisingly well with Dragon Ball's themes of constantly growing stronger. RPGs have a reputation for length, and combining that with a complete anime series storyline, we have a pretty beefy game on our hands.
Damn, boy, he's thick! Boy, that's a thick-ass boy! Damn.
You will not be disappointed by the runtime here. I finished the game after just over 30 hours, and I was going out of my way to do as many side quests and extra things as I could. It has content in spades. But what is the contents of this content, you may ask? Well, it wouldn't be a good old Goku game without fighting, and Kakarot's combat system is nothing you haven't seen before within the series. And it's honestly a little lacking when you get down to the raw potential of your character's movesets. So you'll eventually gain access to several different characters at certain points in the story, but it doesn't really mean much for several reasons, but all the reasons fall under the umbrella of similarity. Every character can pretty much do the same exact thing as every other character. Even the special scenario characters behave the same way as everyone else. The only real difference is what moves you equip with each of your characters, and I'll cover more on that in a second. You have access to a melee button for a basic combo you can lengthen later on. You can fire ki blasts, you can evade by pressing the button, or speed your movement up by holding it down. You can block to reduce damage taken if it's too late to evade, charge your ki, fire super attacks by holding the bumper and then selecting the corresponding face button, and you can transform once you reach that point in the story. And that's really it. There's no heavy attacks to splice into combos, no grapples, no kick button. This is what you get. You can end a melee combo early by hitting the ki or the charge button, but it's no better for setting enemies up than your melee finisher. And even your special moves only fall into a few categories when you boil it down: beams, explosions, and melee attacks with a lot of guard breaking potential. The most fun you're going to have from this combat system is through the surge mechanic. If you've ever played a Ninja Storm game, it feels very similar to the Awakened state. Basically, you become a lot stronger, but you can actually cancel actions into other actions. This is so much fun. You not only get major stun damage to your melee attacks, but being able to fire off your most damaging moves one after another can utterly destroy most any enemy. This is downright essential for survival in some of the fights that pit you against more than one enemy. Singling them out one by one and melting their health bar as much as possible is essential for not getting dogpiled. The surge state is honestly just fun to abuse. It makes me wish that there were more creative but less powerful options in combat. I would have loved a grapple, or maybe a more intricate move system that allows certain moves to combo into others, but certain moves can't be put with others because they conflict. I just think the ball was dropped as far as creative stuff for the fights in the campaign. But oh well. At first this was honestly fine by me, but once I started getting the hang of things like perfect evading and the surge state, I started to notice how bare this system was during the campaign. I even started to get downright frustrated by the number of invincible periods the enemies would go through. Like when you're in a battle, and it doesn't matter who it's against, could be Cell, could be a Cyberman. They will enter states where they are invulnerable to knockback damage. This means you need to get away from them so you don't get hit. That's fine, it's a basic revenge kick move, nothing too extravagant. But then every enemy also has special moves too. But if it's a stronger boss character, they sometimes like to go absolutely nuts with their special attacks. So it becomes a game of strafe left or right for a solid 45 seconds just to have a chance to get a combo in and then have them go back on the rampage. And if you try to get bold and attack them during this time, you'll see that they're invulnerable to knockback, and you won't have time to get out of the way before you get caught in a string of super attacks. It just doesn't feel right to have to deal with being juggled by attacks that are doing 1 damage to you, and you, a level 66, can take them down in 1 hit. Now, I had such high hopes for the boss characters at first. Raditz fight was the most challenging and engaging fight until, I shit you not, the super optional boss with the female Ginyu member. But that's because they both have these huge, larger-than-life attacks that makes me feel like I'm actually evading this Gauntlet of Doom, not playing Pac-Man. Raditz was the only fight in the main quest that I actually lost to. Sure, a lot of that was because I hadn't figured out how the game worked yet, but I think a large part of it was because he actually felt like a real boss. I was so happy after I finally beat him, because now I get to go see all the other creative desperation moves each boss would have. I was ready for each major villain to have these incredibly dangerous moves that put my dexterity to the test. But after that point, they were all a lot less interesting, and that's if I saw one at all. All that being said, when the combat works, it feels really good. Lining up beams to hit multiple targets, getting assists from your party, discovering that beam struggles were a thing even though it happened way too late for me. Seriously, I didn't get my first one until the fight with Kid Buu. It was all great though. And speaking of assists, the party setup is my favorite aspect of this combat system. So if you noticed, I kept referring to the lackluster encounters being the worst fights in the campaign. That's because after every saga, you have the opportunity to freely explore the world with a party of 3 members from a select few. This was so great because you get to customize the party's attacks, as well as 2 attacks from each that you can call upon if they're available. So you can essentially make up combos with your 2 teammates if you can coordinate it. Plus, they're likely to smack an enemy back at you if you launch them, so you can get a follow-up move in, or maybe even jump in at the right time and block a hit or 2. And if both of their meters are full, you can unleash a Z move that immediately interrupts the enemy and gets some good damage in. Needless to say, I'm having much more fun with combat now that I'm out of the constraints of the main quest. Not that the preceding 30 hours wasn't a good time, I just much prefer the tools you're given after the fact. It's a great way of reaping the benefits of Kakarot's most defining feature, its open world. There is plenty to do and see, from catching fish, playing baseball, learning to drive, these annoying random encounters that will follow you around. You will always have something to do. Not to mention all the side quests you can come across. There are so many of these things to go after, and the extra experience is worth it, so I do as many as you can stand. And I say that because, yes, a lot of these are just cryptic or boring. Yes, looking at the Royal Tomato Hunt. I can only remember one quest that wasn't a fetch quest or a beat this guy up quest, and it was getting to catch a fish that stole Little Marin's toy. Other than that, you'll be a sparring partner, errand boy, or attacked by robots. Oh my god, this game and its robots. Put $20 in a retirement account every time someone just randomly summons robots on you, or they just show up out of nowhere. You will have set yourself up nicely by the end of it. But it was never really about the content of the gameplay and the side missions. It was always the joy of interacting with my favorite characters that made it special. Luckily, that's what this game thinks too. These are soul emblems. They're upgradable coins that you have to strategically place on this community board in order to gain special effects in the game. There are different boards that have a different attribute dedicated to its leveling, and each board has its leader in the center. As you go along in your journey, you'll collect soul emblems of your friends, and maybe even a few enemies too. Emblems can double their effects if placed next to other emblems. So if you want extra points in your Z Warriors board that helps with combat, it's best to put Gohan with his dad for that board since he's the leader. But if you want your cooking skills to get a boost, put the boy with his mother's board so your meals will give you more potent buffs. There are lots of placements to consider, and it was one of the few percentage games that I actually kind of enjoyed. But it's probably because I just enjoy these characters, and it's pretty self-explanatory that Master Roshi would like it if I gave him a girly magazine. And I've seen these characters and just know how they interact with each other because I've seen their story. And while on the topic of their story, I am not about to go over my thoughts on the overall plot in this game, because it's Dragon Ball. Just go watch the show. It's definitely worth it if you've never done it, but you probably have. It's safe to say you have. This is the most in-depth a Dragon Ball game has ever gone with the story. There are some very specific story beats that I didn't expect to be covered. However, it's likely that a favorite moment or two of yours wasn't represented, because not everything could be translated as much as I would like it to be. I was honestly disappointed by a lot of the story beats in the campaign. When I saw that this game was being developed by the same people that made the gorgeous Ninja Storm games, and I also saw the beautiful art direction of this game, I thought we were going to be in for such a treat the whole way through. But nope. The major story beats and some other odds and ends are the only parts that had true love and care placed into them. But when they decide to flex on us and show us what they can really do, damn. Just damn. It's breathtaking, and it makes me wish the whole game was this stylish and animated. But more often than not, it's no better than a Kingdom Hearts dialogue exchange with generic desynced lip flaps and idle 3D models standing around. And sometimes the animation in the low budget areas are just flat out bad. It's such a drop off in quality, unfortunately. Wait, what were Tien and Chaozu just doing? Oh, man. The poor kid's having nightmares even when he's awake.
Farewell, Tien!
The game has looks down. These models are so expressive and rigged impressively well. The world looks absolutely gorgeous at times, the lighting is mostly fantastic, even if the effect they use to simulate sunlight interacts with the camera a little too much and tends to wash out the picture at times. It just goes on the cheap end sometimes, and that's a real shame when compared to the highs it displays. Voice acting is a bit of a mixed bag too. Sean Schemmel is my default Goku, so even when he gives us lines like this,
A Super Saiyan?
I still just see Goku being adult. Chris Sabat needs to stop hogging all the roles too. He plays so many characters, and no offense to the guy, but he doesn't do much to change his voice. It's very obvious when he's speaking. I can suspend my disbelief for voices like Piccolo and Vegeta when I think he actually puts in a good job and differentiates the two characters that are tonally similar, but he plays a total of 3 of the Ginyu Force, making his Jace stand out even more and come across as frankly laughable this time around.
Lord Frieza! He's that scary you ordered!
And wow, did anyone hear Android 19's voice before the game shipped? They didn't add the digital filter like he had in the show, so it's literally just Todd Haberkorn doing a high-pitched voice, and it's ear-grating.
We already know the full extent of your fighting prowess.
It just makes me hear Martin from The Simpsons.
The preferred spelling of wiener is W-I-E-N-E-R.
I actually spent most of my time taking notes, just writing down funny-sounding voice lines. So instead of ripping on actors and actresses, I'm just gonna play a small montage of my favorites. Enjoy.
Nice! Fine. Be that way.
I'm no good at fighting.
No! This cannot be! Geezer.
Go on. That was incredible. Don't ever forget what that felt like.
What?
What? Thank you, stranger!
There were also times where I felt like the audio engineers just kind of fell asleep. Like lines that had their beginning cut off.
What do you think that you could possibly accomplish in just one day?
Or in Krillin's case here, 2 takes of the same line that made it into the final dialogue run.
Bulma, let the others know what's going on, and then head back to Earth. Bulma, let the others know what's going on, then head back to Earth.
I can accept that the average person wouldn't notice or care about things like this, but I think it just leads to it feeling like a sloppy execution to me. And I expect more from a game that's already so great. Because, yeah, even after all this game's annoying shortcomings like having to deal with random encounters, stopping you from starting side quests, not being able to make out what's happening in combat on some occasions, having the ground control be a little too precise, and even a glitch that caused me to have to restart, I think this is a remarkably solid game. The adventure is dripping with care from people who love Dragon Ball, down to its smallest detail. If combat being on the initially shallow side doesn't put you off, I think you've got to look forward to the best single-player Dragon Ball game in some time. The RPG elements are probably some of the only ones that I can actually get down with, because they were clear-cut in their purpose, and that's great for people like me who need things to be clear-cut. Just like any good RPG, the post-game content is absolutely overflowing with side quests and super bosses to train up and take down. This game is begging for DLC in some form. I would love to see some movies get representation, honestly, but only time will tell with how much representation and attention we get to see post-launch. Go pick this game up if you love Dragon Ball and haven't already. And don't come to me when you get sucked in and drop crazy amounts of time into it, because it happened to me too. I appreciate you for watching, so thanks so much for stopping by and have a great day.